kindly welcome with me Mr. David Ofungi, who is the curator for the Energy Mkutano 2021.
Thank you, Kathy, and welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to briefly address you. In our roles as curators, we do not know the subject matter, where we just merely put the artists together, as it would be in a museum. So, first of all, let me just echo the apology that came from Kathy. We are expecting the minister anytime soon. They are co-conveners, so proceeding without them would be a bit of a challenge, but I see that the ministry is ably represented. There's the permanent secretary, a center representative. There's a couple of commissioners upstairs and downstairs. So any messages that are projected at this stage, we'll get to them in an unrefined fashion. Thank you. It is my intention to start this discussion with giving you a bit of context of the genesis of the Mkutano. We have, for the past few years, been covering matters economic, principally talking about things that are aligned with the National Development Plan. So we've dived into subject matter around SME finance, which was in 2018 with support from the European Union and some of the actors here, including Stanbic. We have tackled the subject matter around science, technology, and innovation. And last year, despite the challenges of COVID, in the room downstairs, there was a conversation that tackled the aspect of alternative finance in local governments. And I think what Kathy talked about in her introduction remarks around it not being a specific talk shop has manifested in each one of those discussions. And I'll just touch on one or two things that have happened historically. I think what happened last year was something that resulted in a cabinet paper that was informed by the deliberations here. So we had a variety of actors from the local government space, development partners. We were privileged to have the presence of two ministers who took the comments to heart, the then Minister of Kampala Capital City Authority, and the then and current Minister of Local Government. And for that, we got momentum to see whether it was within our right to stretch this discussion into sector-specific engagement. So it's nice to have things at macro level, but obviously getting key actors from any one space would be important, which is what led us to the current discussion around energy. And the energy space is the undercurrent of infrastructure that is required for the next phase of our development agenda. The Mkutano is deliberately framed around partnerships. We don't discuss sponsors. And they give us two things. One, validation, conceptual input, and obviously financial support. So for that, I'd like to again echo what Kathy said and commend our partners, USAID, Power Africa, many of whom are on Zoom. There's a representative here in the room. There is also UNCDF, Umeme, Stanbic, NSSF, Mandalis Energy, represented by Peter, Power for All, and UGEFA. Perhaps most important for the Mkutano was a purposeful validation that we got from the government, again with the minister sanctioning the co-convening role. So we have worked with Cecilia, the PS herself. There's a couple of people from the ministry who are here who have been very instrumental. And all these organizations have their own representatives that have been helping us. The subject of power and electricity tends to be emotional. It came to light when we're having our planning meetings, and there's a line item that we tend to ignore, and it was the standby generator. I said, do we really need a standby generator when we have Meme Celestino has signed off? But it got some emotions going through in the sense that the conversation we have is about surplus electricity, but we know that there is other aspects in the value chain that require an alignment in investment for the power story to be complete. So when we have discussions around some of these panels, as you will see, they will open up some of the thinking around how to put some planning in place to uplift the sector as a whole. And that includes grid and off-grid. It includes a sustainable energy mix. And importantly, and I'm glad that there's a representative for the PSST, the people who write the check at government level, but also downstairs, there's a fluid engagement between project developers and with funders to make sure that this discussion leads into specific transactions that have a net positive on the sector. So for that, I'd like to extend a thank you to UNCDF for being very instrumental in the deal room. I will perhaps end by just touching upon the keynotes that we'll have today. The keynotes experts, global experts and renowned and respected authorities in energy transitions. In the morning, we'll hear from Mr. Tulani Kabashe, who is the founder and executive chairman of Build Africa, but he also serves as a chairman, group chairman of Standard Bank, and used to run ESCOM. So he has that balance between the aspects of power as well as finance. And then James Cameron in the afternoon is going to have a fireside chat. He's another global expert in climate finance and climate change that effectively talks about the transition in our energy story, and effectively also has some ideas on how with the issue around fossil fuel, we can still have a balance between both resources as we look to industrialize. Just on that point, there's a global shift in the conversation around energy. Most companies have subscribed to net zero. In fact, many of the countries that have industrialized in means that would be frowned upon right now have effectively done that transition. But that predicament is something that we have to face as a country, because you know what's going on in the Albertine Rift, but the conversations are about responsibility and changing. And I think the coexistence is something that is manifesting in some of the discussions in government. Stanbic Bank, one of our partners, has done a very good job at supporting smaller business in the oil and gas space, but they recently appointed a head of sustainability for the bank who happens to be in the room. So they are pushing this hybrid agenda forward. I will stop there and yield the floor to the experts. But once again, to you in the audience here physically, and to all the parties online, karibuni, thank you, and have a very positive day.